I still remember the way the air changed in the house the day Lucas and Elise moved in. At first, it was quiet, an eerie kind of silence that slithered in like a low fog through a cracked window. I didn't say anything. I told myself it was just the sound of change and that I needed to give it time. For nearly 40 years, that house in the hills of Granada had held everything I knew about family. My husband and I built it with sweat, laughter, and our own bare hands. We raised Lucas there. We planted orange trees in the back. Every dent in the wooden banister told a story. Every picture frame held a memory. But the moment Elise entered, with her vision of clean modernity and tranquil minimalism, everything softened into something beige and unfamiliar. It began with little things. My old transistor radio in the kitchen disappeared one morning. She replaced it with a voice-controlled speaker. "It's to organize the soundscape," she told me. I smiled, though I didn't understand what was wrong with my old, crackling dial. Next went my yellow floral curtains. She claimed the pattern was too loud for the open design she envisioned. I said nothing. I told myself this was the kind of compromise families make. Then came the rearranging of rooms. Elise asked if I could start keeping my things in the small back bedroom since the main guest room would better serve as her home office. I agreed. She said it was temporary. She always said everything was temporary. A few weeks later, my rocking chair ended up in the garage. In its place was a sleek, angular seat that looked like it had been designed for someone who never intended to sit for long. It was cold. Sterile. Elise said the old chair clashed with her aesthetic. I told myself it didn't matter, that a chair was just a chair. But one night, while setting the table for dinner, Elise turned to Lucas and, in her usual honeyed tone, remarked that I'd left water rings on the countertop again. Then she looked at me and added, without even pretending to whisper, that maybe it was time for me to think about living in a space that better suited my energy and needs. She said the kitchen was starting to feel cluttered. I stood there holding a bowl of mashed potatoes, unsure whether to laugh or sit down. Lucas said nothing. He just kept pouring iced tea, staring at the painting on the wall like it held the answer to everything. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the wallpaper I'd picked out 23 years earlier. The corners had started to peel. I rubbed one seam with my thumb. It felt like something inside me was peeling, too. Deep down, I already knew. I was being erased. And I still didn't say a word. I started noticing small discrepancies. At first, they were paper thin, a missing envelope here, a different balance on my mobile banking app there. I chalked it up to forgetfulness. I told myself I was tired, grieving still, even though Henry had been gone 5 years. But then the electricity bill arrived in a new name, Elisa's. Then the water. Then the property tax notice came addressed to Rollins Estate Holdings. That wasn't just strange. That was wrong. I stood in the hallway holding that letter, my fingers trembling slightly. The paper was heavier than usual, too thick, legal stock. The kind you use when you want people to not ask questions. I turned it over. In the corner, instead of my name, was a logo I had never seen, 3 narrow lines forming a triangle. I walked into my room and sat on the bed. I held the letter in my lap. Daniel had always been the quiet one. The obedient one. The boy who once cried when I trimmed the apple tree too much, worried it would never bear fruit again. And yet here I was, being trimmed branch by branch, silently, expertly, until I barely recognized myself in my own home. Elise had become the conductor of this quiet overture. Her voice remained soft, her movements graceful, but there was an edge beneath it all. One evening, as she arranged dinner plates, "Not my china, hers," she said. "I'm thinking of repainting the walls in the hallway. The yellow feels a bit dated." I said nothing. That yellow was Henry's favorite. The color of warmth. Of sun. Of the mornings we used to sip tea on the stairs before Daniel woke up. Now, it was dated. They moved my photos, first from the living room to the hallway, then to the back bedroom, and finally into a storage box labeled Sentimental Archive. That word. Archive. Like I was a chapter in someone else's memoir, already written and boxed away. It started with the mail. A letter from the bank that arrived on a Thursday morning, just slightly misaddressed. Margaret Rollins, care of Rollins Family Holdings. I stared at it like it was written in a different language. I hadn't set up any such entity. I never signed anything like that. But my name was there. Slightly demoted. No longer the owner. Now just a care of. Inside the envelope was a simple update notice, confirming the recent structural adjustment of one of my oldest accounts. The balance looked familiar, but the account number didn't. I didn't even know this account existed until this letter arrived. I went to the bank the next morning, dressed in my Sunday blouse and holding a folder full of old statements, the kind with my name proudly printed in the top right corner. The young man behind the glass smiled at me like I was somebody's grandmother with a forgotten password. "I'd like to speak to a manager, please," I said. "About a trust one didn't authorize." His smile faltered, and within 10 minutes, I was seated in a glass room with a woman named Jessica who wore a badge that said Senior Client Relations Officer. She pulled up my file. Her smile vanished completely. "Mrs. Rollins, it says here you transferred your accounts into a private trust 6 weeks ago. With a notarized authorization form." I felt cold all over. I didn't transfer anything. I don't have a trust. I've never signed any authorization. She turned her monitor slightly so I could see. And there it was, a digital scan of my signature. Only, it wasn't mine. Not quite. It was like mine, but jagged. Slightly off. Jessica stared at the screen, then back at me. "You're saying you didn't sign this?" I nodded. My throat was too dry to speak. She typed something quickly, then excused herself from the room. I sat there alone for 10 minutes, then 15. I looked down at the folder in my lap, and my fingers clenched the edge of the paper. When Jessica returned, her tone had changed. "I'm going to flag this as an internal fraud review. But if you believe there's forgery involved, I strongly suggest contacting an attorney. And, perhaps law enforcement." Law enforcement. The words echoed in my mind like thunder. This wasn't just a power grab anymore. This wasn't just about yellow paint and missing rocking chairs. This was fraud. It was a crime. And someone, no, not someone, my son and his wife had done this. They didn't just want me out of the house. They wanted to erase the fact that it had ever been mine at all. Her name was Naomi Pena, and she was the first person who didn't look at me like I was losing my mind. I found her through the local community center's legal aid program. I walked in with my folder, my worry, and the shaky determination of a woman who'd been pushed to the very edge of silence. She didn't rush me. Didn't give me the gentle nod that says "poor dear." She listened. When I handed her the printout of the forged signature, she didn't blink. She just took out a yellow legal pad and started writing. "So you're telling me your son and daughter-in-law transferred your assets into a trust you didn't approve, forged your signature, and are systematically removing you from ownership of your home?" I nodded. "And that they've been pressuring you to leave the house?" "Yes," I said. "They say I should move into assisted living. Elise says I need more support. But I can cook, drive, take care of myself. I walk every morning." Naomi looked up. "This isn't elder care. It's elder abuse. What they're doing is financial exploitation, and from what you're telling me, it may involve criminal forgery, unlawful transfer of assets, and possibly coercion." She paused. "I've seen this before. Not often. But it happens. Usually when there's money involved. And there's a lot of money involved, isn't there?" I nodded again, slower this time. I felt like I was exhaling after holding my breath for a decade. She filed an emergency injunction the next morning. A judge ordered a freeze on all trust accounts linked to my name. A formal forensic review of the signature was requested. A subpoena was sent to the notary service that had verified the form. And then Naomi turned to me and said something I'll never forget. "You're not powerless, Margaret. You just forgot how loud your voice can be when you decide to use it." That night, I slept better than I had in years. I didn't tell Daniel or Elise. Not yet. I just watched them as they passed me in the hallway, still smiling, still sipping their oat milk lattes and watching documentaries about wellness and legacy and inner peace. They didn't know their legacy was about to be rewritten by the woman they tried to erase. It was a Tuesday morning when Daniel found out. I was in the garden, trimming the edges of the rose bushes, the same ones I planted with Henry the year after we paid off the house. I heard the front door slam. Then hurried footsteps. "Mom. We need to talk." His voice wasn't angry. Not yet. Just clipped. Controlled. Like he was trying not to shout. I turned slowly, gloves still on, and wiped my hands on the apron. "Of course, Daniel." We sat at the patio table. Elise didn't come outside, but I saw her silhouette behind the curtain, watching. "Why did we get an email from a law office about a court order on the trust? Why did you hire a lawyer without talking to us?" I looked at him carefully. "Because you forged my name, Daniel. And you put my home and money into something I never agreed to. That's not a family decision. That's a crime." He went pale. For a moment, I saw the boy I raised, the one who once hid under the table when he broke a window, scared to admit it. But now he wasn't 7. He was a grown man who had taken everything I built and tried to file me away like an old tax return. Elise said it was better for tax purposes. "We didn't mean to steal anything." "You didn't mean to?" I snapped, for the first time in years. My voice cracked like glass. "You took my house, Daniel. You sold my stocks. You put my life into a spreadsheet and calculated how long you could keep me compliant." He blinked fast. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" I stood now. "Tell me. What do you call it when your own son tricks you into signing fake documents? When he works with his wife to steal money from the woman who gave him everything?" There was silence. And then, as if on cue, Elise stepped outside. Calm, perfect Elise, in her beige cashmere robe. "Margaret," she said, "I think you're overreacting. You've been confused lately. We've been trying to help." I turned on her like wind on dry leaves. "You replaced me. Room by room. Word by word. You took my home, my memories, and tried to make me feel like a guest in my own life. That ends now." She opened her mouth, but I didn't wait. I walked into the house, straight to the hallway phone, not the smart speaker, not their app. The landline. Mine. I dialed. 911, "What's your emergency?" "Yes," I said, voice steady. "My name is Margaret Rollins. I believe I am the victim of financial fraud and elder abuse. I have legal documentation and court orders to support this. I need officers dispatched to my address immediately." I gave the address. Daniel shouted behind me. Elise tried to take the phone. I held it firm. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. A tall, no-nonsense woman named Officer Jansen, and a younger man whose name I didn't catch. They didn't come in guns drawn. They didn't have to. Truth doesn't need dramatics, it just needs light. I met them at the door with a folder in my hand and a fire in my chest I hadn't felt in years. "Thank you for coming. I've filed an injunction through my attorney. I have documents proving a fraudulent transfer of assets, forged authorization, and attempts to remove me from legal ownership of this home." They didn't brush me off. They asked if I was safe. If I felt threatened. I answered honestly. "No one's hit me. But I've been slowly erased. Psychologically. Financially. This isn't an emergency with bruises. It's an emergency with intent. They asked to speak to Daniel and Elise. Daniel was pacing. Elise was on the phone, probably with a lawyer. Or her yoga therapist. Or her alignment specialist. Whatever she called the person who taught her how to emotionally gaslight with a calm voice. I watched from the kitchen as Daniel tried to explain it away. It was for tax protection. The trust benefits everyone. We were going to tell her. Officer Jansen cut him off. You forged legal documents. You're on tape admitting it was done without her knowledge. That's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud. Elise jumped in. But she's been unstable. Confused. She's old. She gets dates wrong and forgets things. The officer raised a hand. Stop. You're not qualified to assess mental capacity. And what you're describing, taking financial control from a fully functioning adult without court order or consent, is financial elder abuse under state law. Daniel sat down. Elise went quiet. I handed over every paper Naomi had prepared. Bank records. Emails. Signature comparisons. A photo of the original deed with my name on it. And a copy of the property transfer Elise tried to push through via her company, Rollins Estate Holdings, where she was listed as managing partner. My house. My money. My memories. All funneled into a shell company created by the woman who married my son. The officers filed an initial report. Officer Jansen turned to me before leaving. If they try to make you leave this property, or harass you in any way, call us. Immediately. You're the legal resident and rightful owner, at least until a court says otherwise. Which, by the way, they won't. As they stepped out, Daniel finally looked me in the eyes. His voice was quiet. Why are you doing this, Mom? I stared at him for a long moment. The son I held. The boy I raised to be kind. The man I never expected to see sitting beside a woman who could smile while robbing me blind. Because, I said, you already did it to me. I'm just finally saying no. 3 days later, Elise stopped talking to me entirely. She walked around the house like I was a ghost. If I entered a room, she left it. If I sat at the kitchen table, she chose the bar stool. Once, I caught her holding her phone at me, like she was recording. For evidence, no doubt. I didn't flinch. Daniel tried to stay neutral. He mumbled things like, we just need to breathe, and maybe we can talk to a mediator. But I had already spoken to someone much better than a mediator. Naomi was preparing a civil suit. It would cover financial fraud, forgery of legal documents, unauthorized asset transfers, emotional distress, elder abuse under State Statute 318.2b. But she added something else too. We're asking for punitive damages. This isn't just about reversing what they did. It's about making sure they never do it again, to anyone. That same day, Naomi filed an emergency restraining petition to prevent them from selling or altering any property tied to my estate. That included the house, my accounts, and the investment portfolio I'd quietly maintained since Henry died, the one Elise didn't know existed. The look on Daniel's face when he was served at the breakfast table, in a gray robe, with cold eggs in front of him, was not anger. It was betrayal. Funny. That's what he thought I had done to him. How could you take this to court, he asked, like I'd set fire to the family album. Because you already did. You just thought I wouldn't notice. We're family. I looked at him, tired now. If family robs you, manipulates you, erases you, is it still family? Or is it just someone who knows which lock you use on the back door? The case was scheduled for preliminary hearing in 2 weeks. Naomi warned me they'd likely countersue. Probably claim mental incompetence. Maybe argue I'd consented verbally. She told me to prepare for personal attacks. I nodded. I've been attacked quietly for years. I can handle it loud. But it was that night, after the papers were served, after Elise slammed the guest room door, that I opened a folder from the bottom drawer of my bedroom desk. Inside was a letter from Henry. Dated 2007. He'd written it after his second heart attack. It said, simply, "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But you're still here, Maggie. This house, this life, it's yours. Protect it. Don't let anyone treat you like a guest in what you built." I placed it beside my lamp and whispered, "I'm protecting it now, Henry. I'm protecting us both." Naomi called me at 7:42 a.m. on a Monday. Her voice was tight. "Margaret, they filed their countersuit. As predicted, claiming mental incapacity. But they made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" I asked. "A digital one." She explained. Elise submitted an email thread to support their claim, correspondence between Daniel and a family advisor supposedly expressing concern for my declining mental health. But in one of the attachments, Daniel forgot to delete the original timestamp metadata. The message, dated months ago, had a very telling edit trail. It showed Daniel and Elise had rewritten and backdated parts of the conversation. The forensic metadata revealed that the email Elise submitted to the court had been modified just 3 days ago. Worse still, in the metadata footer was a note. "Use this to build the incompetence angle. Naomi will push hard. We have to make her look confused." They were not just defensive. They were fabricating evidence. I felt sick. Naomi, however, sounded invigorated. "This isn't just unethical. It's possibly criminal obstruction. We'll file a motion to dismiss their countersuit, and I'll alert the judge personally." She paused. "Also, this makes Daniel look like the primary instigator, not Elise. That changes our strategy." My heart dropped a little. So he wasn't being led? Doesn't look like it. Elise is cold, yes, but your son? He's been orchestrating more than you thought. That night, I sat in my room with the lights off and the windows open. I tried to remember the last time Daniel looked me in the eyes without calculation. Without distance. I couldn't. The next morning, I passed him in the hallway. "I know what you did," I said. "The email. The edits." He didn't argue. He just whispered, "You're ruining everything." "No," I said. "You did. When you chose money over me." Naomi filed a motion the next day for contempt of court and fraudulent submission of evidence. The judge didn't even blink. The countersuit was thrown out. Elise's name was officially added to the list of persons of interest in an open financial fraud investigation. Daniel's lawyer filed to withdraw representation 2 days later. And then, finally, Elise left. Packed her things. Slammed a suitcase down the stairs. Got into a black car and didn't look back. Daniel stayed. But the house had never felt emptier. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not the temperature. The feeling. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights. The soft coughs of strangers. The judge's stern face, unmoved by tears or history. Just facts. Just evidence. Daniel sat at the opposite table, alone. No Elise. No lawyer beside him. Just a public defender who'd been assigned last minute. His shoulders were slumped. His suit wrinkled. His face, unfamiliar. I didn't recognize the man who used to build Lego castles on the living room floor. Naomi walked me through everything again before the hearing, timelines, signatures, key phrases to avoid. But when the judge asked me to speak, I didn't use any of that. I just told the truth. "Your Honor, I'm not here because of a dispute over money. I'm here because I was erased. Slowly. Quietly. And deliberately. I was gaslit into questioning my own memory. I was told I was forgetful when I knew I was being lied to. I was made to feel like an inconvenience in the house I bought with my husband. I raised my son to be kind, to be decent. And I thought he was. Until the moment I realized he saw me not as a mother, but as an obstacle. They forged my signature. They stole from me. But worse, they made me feel like I didn't matter. The room was silent. Daniel didn't look up once. The forensic experts presented their findings. The email manipulation. The document forgery. The financial transfers Elise had authorized under Rollins Family Holdings, using my funds to pay off her own company's debts. The judge didn't take long. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Margaret Rollins, on all counts. The trust is dissolved. All assets are to be returned. Restitution is to be calculated. The court also recommends criminal referral for further investigation. It was over. But not really. Outside the courthouse, a young reporter from a local newspaper approached. "Mrs. Rollins, can we ask how you feel now that you've won?" I looked at her for a moment. Her pen poised. Her eyes bright. "I didn't win," I said. "I just stopped losing." That night, the house was quiet again. No voices in the hallway. No whispering behind doors. Just the tick of the grandfather clock. The rustle of the oak tree outside my bedroom window. And me, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, finally tasting peace. Not joy. Not triumph. But peace. It's been 11 months since the judgment. The media stayed interested for a few weeks. I was in a podcast. A local paper ran the headline. "Elder woman fights back and wins." But stories like mine fade. People move on. Which is fine. Because this was never about attention. I still live in the house. The rose bushes bloomed this spring, the biggest they've been in years. I think Henry would have liked that. Naomi visits sometimes. We drink coffee on the patio. She tells me about her other cases, about daughters hiding keys from mothers, sons with joint bank accounts they never earned. It's more common than you think. You'd be surprised how many people wait for their parents to get just forgetful enough. That's when they move in. And move the money. I nod. But I'm no longer surprised. Daniel hasn't spoken to me since the ruling. His criminal case is ongoing. They may drop the heavier charges. He cooperated fully after Elise disappeared. Last I heard, she left the country. Naomi says she might reappear someday. I say I don't care if she does. Daniel wrote me a letter last month. I didn't open it. Not yet. Not because I'm angry. Because I'm not ready to read a man I once rocked to sleep ask me to forgive something he still doesn't understand. Maybe I'll open it someday. But today I watered my plants. Paid my bills. Fed the neighbor's cat while they were out of town. I sat in my armchair and listened to the quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a boundary, not a void. And before I went to bed, I whispered aloud. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't confused. I was right. Then I turned off the light. And slept. But if you're still here, listening, thank you. Stories like mine don't always get told. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, true, raw, sometimes uncomfortable, I share them on my YouTube channel. Subscribe. For more real-life experiences, quiet resistance, and the kind of truth that doesn't scream, but still echoes.